Hey, happy
Hey,
Tuesday. Happy Coffee Tech Talk Tuesday at
hey,
7 o'clock Central Time. My
that
name's
was
John
some jams.
Ferguson. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm
Hey,
doing
did
good.
did you notice that we have really made it? You've made it when you become animated, especially by Dietrich. So I love the new. Do you like it? I like it. I think it's kind of
That's
fun.
the first time I had seen that. That I do like it. I do like it.
I think
Um,
you're the one with the beard.
let's go with that. Yeah, that, that absolutely makes sense.
I just can't keep up with it. I can't manage it. It doesn't look that good. Like you look. That cup looks really good with the little beard thing. So really excited
He's
about it.
yeah, he's made me look happy there. That's great.
And I like the light purple sort of blue kind of oceany color. It's like very much like I want to sit on a beach and just chill. It's the middle of winter time. But
Yeah,
no, so we've got some, you know, uh some disheartening news tonight, but it's a reality check, right? So
it
disheartening
is.
only in the fact that William Ortiz and from the global coffee quality manager from Caravela Coffee was unable to get a strong enough Wi-Fi to connect to do the show tonight. So he will be back Thursday night, 2 nights from now at 7 o'clock, same time, same channel, and we're still going to go live. We're still going to record it, and we're going to maybe keep this one a little bit shorter, but he's going to be here to talk about those simple technologies we were talking about that are used at the farm, on the farm, from harvesting, post-harvest processing, and then so on. But Marty, I think there's one thing that
Absolutely.
that maybe we should address. Like we haven't really talked about seed to cup, right?
We really haven't. I mean, we've nibbled on some stuff and talked about various things, but really haven't focused in on that. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
So we're taking the
Uh,
opportunity today to do it. Let's do it.
exactly.
So we made a new slide, whipped it up about a half hour ago.
Seed to cup.
So we're going to do a quick chat about coffee production, basically from the time that the cherries harvested to the time that that's pretty much put on the boat ready to hit the United States. And so I used to give coffee tours back when I lived in Kansas City. It's a great way to kind of get people
Yeah.
uh, up to speed on kind of like how is coffee basically arrived to the United States? Where does it come from? So
Well, a lot of people like a lot of our foods. They think, like like my wife, she'll say this that she thinks all of her meat, like chicken and stuff, is born into those little styrofoam trays. But there's
well,
in most foods, including coffee, there's so many other processes that go on before it actually ends up in
yeah.
your cup, and it all starts um, basically overseas, other than Hawaii. Um,
which
it's
is over an ocean,
which is over an ocean,
right?
so
Yep.
it's not happening locally. So
Nope.
not
Yep.
only is the growth of this food product um, not happening locally, um, you've well, but because of that, you've got to get it here for us to enjoy it. So there's a lot of
Yep.
people involved, a lot of
A-
steps.
And so, like, let's take that journey. It's almost a little overdone in a sense. So, like, a lot of people have been talking about the phrase "seed to cup." It's not really seed to cup. There's so many different, paths and connections. It's more of a web than it is like vertical or horizontal or start to finish. But I think we're just going to do this kind of in a traditional, not traditional, but a very easy kind of approachable manner for people that have may not have ever really thought about it. Like, hey, coffee does come out of a bag. That's a fact. And it comes out of a box, comes out of a can, but it comes
Yeah,
from somewhere else prior to that. So I give it, it's
exactly.
true. It comes out of a bag. So I would like to ask you this. Let's start with a little quiz here. What is this? And it's kind of a trick
You,
question.
okay, now I'm going to preface this. This let's I guess this is Stump Marty
That's what
episode
we got for you today.
which is great, and I'm going to live vicariously through you. You've gone to
Okay.
Origin. I've not been blessed with that trip yet,
Okay.
and so there's a whole lot of learning going on. That being said, can you tell where I'm heading with this is that those little teepee looking piles of sticks, I don't know.
How about this?
Well, that would look to me like what would be referred to as a raised bed.
Absolutely correct. You got that correct. That's a way that they store the bamboo, frames during the time in which they are setting up the beds or tearing them down, and that is the storage mechanism, the way in which they store their goods, and they use them year after year from season to the next season, the annual. So you were exactly correct. And when I walked upon this in this field, it's like, okay, this is where the drying, or this is where the coffee dries. We're going to talk about like what that means later. But I was like, this is, what are all those little teepees and there's like a little house? And actually they do provide shade, and you can sit inside of it and get respite from the sun during the day. So it's kind of like this makeshift little shelter if you want it to be, or it's just to stack them. And I thought it was kind of cool,
I'd never seen that. That's great.
Yeah. Simple technologies, right? You've got bamboo, and you've got some wire, and then you've got a raised bed, like you said. And so you've never been to Origin, but you know what you're talking about, Marty. I know you do.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I've really, really, truly been blessed by surrounding myself with people that are willing to share their experiences. So I've sat through a lot of stories.
And I also have to say, I want to stop saying the O word, because I think that's also something that a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, why use that word? So I'm going to stop saying that. I have been to places where coffee grows, and it typically is not in Nebraska. There's a couple places in California you can do that too, but Mexico, Puerto Rico, and whatnot. But we'll talk about where the general production of coffee happens. So this is another raised bed with a little bit more, a thicker wood, a little bit of a, type of a mesh, and then some string underneath that. And that's really, again, I think that William on Thursday will talk to us more about why raised beds matter. And we're going to go through, but here's some dried parchment. This is in Honduras. David, which is a wonderful producer. I'm really excited about having his coffee. Actually, Arbor Day Coffee is going to be using his coffee and launching it probably in 2 weeks. So if you want some of David's coffee from Honduras and Santa Elena with Contracha community, this is one of the reasons why this coffee tastes great, is because of the way that he processes it, the way that he picks it, and the care of the exportation of this coffee. So I'm really proud to say that this is going to be great coffee. Get in touch with me. This is a step up. This is at an association or a cooperative where they have a little bit more funding, a little bit more organization, more people. So you have a little bit more infrastructure in place. But this again is a raised bed. And I think William, again, on Thursday, we'll talk about that. I saw a slide. It's like there's like bed 1, bed 2, bed 3, bed 4. I think he's going to talk about some sort of possible aspects there.
Now, for John, for some people that we are using this term raised bed, it's really just a platform that air gets to the top and the bottom.
Yep.
And they spread these beans out to be dried. Now, are there other? Here, I'm playing the devil's advocate. Are there other processes other than raised bed?
There are, and let's start here. I jumped ahead because I wanted to trick you, but I didn't, because you're pretty smart and you know what you're doing here. But seed to cup, for everybody out there, this is a PowerPoint I put together a couple of years ago, and I literally threw this into our presentation tonight 5 minutes ago. So hopefully it's in order. But so as you know, Marty, coffee is harvested off of an evergreen shrub, plant, tree, whatever you want to call it. It's a leafy, woody plant that produces fruit on an annual basis, and it looks like that. It's sort of like harvesting tomatoes in your backyard. I always thought about that, like they're always green and then they turn red ripe, right? The red ripe ones are sweet, the green ones are not. Do you like eating green tomatoes? I don't know. Sorry, they could be good.
Could be. Different taste.
But yeah, now,
Are there
question from the audience, Marty? You have your finger
raised. Are there some varietals that are ripe with another color?
Yes. Oh my gosh. The most famous ones are red and then
Okay,
yellow. And I think that we have pink in there too, a little
okay.
bit of pink, but
And you
yellow.
may get into that. So,
No, actually, not on this slide. I didn't
okay.
have. I didn't throw them.
Well,
That's a good point.
I'm, I'm glad I asked that.
William will though. That'd be awesome. Let's ask William
Awesome.
about that. So altitude plays a big factor in this, where you see the elevation, the higher up the mountain you go, the slower the maturation rate of development of cherries like this. So that's a factor, but also sugars become more dense and whatnot. So there's a little bit of a sweeter, more dense flavor the higher you go up in elevation.
Okay.
Anything like too close to the coast, it gets so ripe so fast, doesn't really develop a lot of sweetness, and that's why they always talk about, oh, higher elevation tastes better. It's relatively true, but there's a lot more that goes into it than just if you pick coffee at a high altitude, it's going to be good. There's absolutely nothing to back that up, other than the fact that it's a good place to start. Like it's an innate quality, like it's got good bones.
Sure.
So where is coffee grown? If you do you know what those two red lines are? Geography. There's the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. I'm going to mess them up, so I'm not going
Good
to tell you
job.
which one's which. But in between that, they call it the coffee belt, and the coffee is generally grown within those areas from the equator north to south. And within this flat piece of map that we have here, we have topography and contour, and we have the elevation that we talk about, where that also plays a big and a huge vital role as to like where coffee can be harvested and where it should be harvested.
Okay.
And all those varieties that you're talking about that grow in some places better than others. But I'd like to talk about this. Do you know where coffee started, genetically speaking?
Well, of course, I've heard a lot, and being a wrench turner, not a coffee guy, but it is my belief and my remembrance, if that's a word, that it started in Ethiopia.
You've got it. You got it. Yep. I mean, Western Ethiopia, I believe,
Okay.
right?
Sure.
Outside of, I think Gemma, Jimma, or I think it's, you could probably spell it many different ways, and I don't want to spell it incorrectly, but you were correct. In Ethiopia, the area of Ethiopia, that is where the genetic history of coffee has been traced to have started. After that, and again, this was 5 minutes ago, I put this in the presentation. I forgot to kind of prep myself for this history, so I will probably get this wrong, but I believe that it went over to across the a part of the Indian Ocean into India and the Indonesian area. And
Okay.
once it was in Indonesia, it was then taken up to Europe, mostly by those trade routes that went, past the south tip of Africa, through around South Africa. The spice British, colony, that time of the spice trade, went over to, Indonesia and China, found coffee, and pretty much brought it back to, I think it was a king in France. This is a terrible quiz section for me right now. I did not prep for this.
I'll jump in for a note here
And
as
Dietrich
well.
is jumping in.
Voice from
Yes.
the sky. At the time when it was first getting traded, I believe the Catholic Church had banned it.
That's a part of the, that is a part of the history, that it was not considered to be relatively okay to be drinking it because it kind of gets you excited. But then I think that they found the benefits of, well, I can write a lot more and stay up a little bit later and be more productive. So let's give this thing a shot, right? But after that,
so bad.
And
right.
I think following that becoming legal, that's what really spurred on massive trade, because they were taking it in and then trading it to their trade routes
Right.
as well.
And so, like when you have a supply demand issue and you find, let's say, land that is more accessible, and you have a lot of land, and let's say it's a new land, and it might be, around the 1492, Christopher Columbus, all that stuff, colonialization of America. That's when coffee was brought over to the Americas. So coffee is not originally from Central or South or any parts of the Americas. It was brought over during that time through that path from Africa over up to Europe, and then over to I think it was called Hispaniola at that time, or the Dominican Republic, or Haiti, somewhere around that area. I don't know the exact notes right now. I didn't have them in front of me. But from there, it actually, I believe that it went down to Brazil. Before it ever got to the mainland over in Mexico or Guatemala, it went straight down to Brazil, and then it made its way through, the Venezuela, I believe, or parts of Brazil, through Colombia, and then up through Central America, landing into like Guatemala and Mexico that we know today. So it's kind of like the last place that it kind of like migrated to, but it seems like it's the first place where we think coffee comes from. One interesting fact about this is, where is chocolate from originally? Now that's a fun one, and that is from Guatemala. So or Central America, or somewhere in the Americas, right? And nowadays, most of the chocolate is produced in Africa. So we have this really interesting switch of coffee and chocolate. Now, all the stuff I'm saying here, it's just, please correct me if I'm wrong, put it in the comment sections and add some notes and comments for us. I did not prepare this is all just from memory. So probably got some of it right. Who knows? I'm obsessed with this stuff, Marty, if you haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, no, it's fine by me.
Last but not least, Mexico. So let's move on. So what does it look like in the field? That's a hill. There's some coffee right in front of you at the very front there. These small little bushes. Some people call them trees. I call them like an evergreen shrub. That's they can grow about 6 feet tall. But you want them to manage like a bonsai tree. Or at least you want it to be harvestable. So yes, if you grew them wild, and some varieties like you were talking about, they, like a geisha, for example. Geishas are really tall. They have big branches. They take up a lot of space, but they're not the easiest thing to harvest, right? But you have Katamor or Katuai or some other types of varieties there that you can prune a little bit more down and get a little bit more manageable, and be able to get all of the cherries off that tree if you prune it right. So you'll see a lot of pruning at the front here, and that is typically what coffee looks like in a commercial setting. Dietrich, what do you got?
Charles Sarin is popping in. And hopefully I'm saying that correct, Charles. He wants to know, what about Sumatra and Java? I thought they came after India and before the Dutch hothouse.
Yeah, Sumatra is an island of Indonesia, so that is a part of that process right after Ethiopia. That is correct. Java, that is a very much early on part. Yes. I don't know what else to say to that. Yeah, you're right. It's like right up, one of the first places to go is Java, right after Mocha, the port of Mocha on the Red Sea, right across from Ethiopia, which is Harar, where the natural process was first famous for, was in the eastern part of Ethiopia, right by the Red Sea. A little boat right over to Yemen. In Yemen, there's a port. It's called the port of Mocha, and then you have Java. Mocha Java, you put those two coffees together, you get Mocha Java. Mocha tastes like a natural processed Ethiopian, and a Java tastes like a Sumatra. It's like more of a wet haul. Well, may or might not have been wet haul at the time, but had more earthy, more round body, like thick earthiness, right? So you have that earthiness and you have that Ethiopian natural process. You put those together 50-50 or whatever blend you want, whatever roast profile you want, you generally get a Mocha Java. So thanks for bringing that up, actually. That's fun. Should I move on to this one? This is the other natural setting of coffee, like basically grown somewhat wild, but this is actually in Chiapas, where they have integrated these types of trees that some are nitrogen leguminous fixating, great for the soil. They drop these like really great foliage to the soil. And then they have there's a pepper plant in there. There's a couple fruit trees, some native tree species, and then there's coffee spread around. This is a really cool way of, I feel, doing, coffee production. It's not the highest yield, but it's pretty darn sustainable. So
well, I'm glad you presented it that way, that there's a lot of other benefits to having other native trees mixed in with your coffee, other than the benefits of it being a shade producing tree for the coffee.
Oh my gosh.
So many other soil related and interactions going on between the plants.
Yeah, that's true. And it's, I mean, this is a very, very difficult process. I've had the immense amount of privilege over the last 20 years to be able to see a lot of this. And there's never a time that I visit a farm where I'm just kind of just overwhelmed with the amount of work that is put into harvesting a basket of cherries, which is not even a pound. I mean, it's maybe a pound of coffee after everything is taken off the cherry. So we'll talk about, but this photo right here, you see it transforms from green to red ripe. And that's a very difficult decision to make. If you're in your backyard, let's say these are cherries, right? You're only going to pick the red cherries. You're not going to pick the green ones. But sometimes you're like, oh, that one's it's turning red. And I'm hungry. I'm going to go ahead and pick it. I'm going to eat it because I don't want to come back here tomorrow. So a lot of the coffee plants that are all red ripe cherries, they have to do 3 or 4 different passes and 3 or 4 different harvests on the same plant. And that usually happens over 3 months. So, and those qualities change throughout that. That's a whole nother process I think William probably get more into. And I'd love to talk questions about him. But this right here, this is a basket of cherries that were picked in Nicaragua that's pretty selective. That's a pretty good eye. That's a very,
looks like a pretty good basket.
It is. That is hard to do. That is
think
not
about
easy
that.
work.
One of the things that just boggled my mind is, we live here in Kansas City. Folgers is was based here in Kansas City, and we would see their tractor trailer trucks pull in totally loaded with coffee, and they'd tilt them up, and they'd unload these coffee, millions and millions and millions of these coffee beans going in to be roasted. And of course, commercial coffees aren't all hand picked, but the same process goes on. Think about all that coffee to load up trucks and ships and containers being picked one cherry at a time by someone's hand. Right. It just is just amazing.
And sometimes we're going to see some slides later on where the one bean by hand, the one cherry by hand did not happen because it was just they just were not incentivized enough financially to care. They're like, well, I'm only going to get maybe a nickel, dime, quarter a pound. So like, what do I care if it's all red ripe? So that's the whole birth of, this movement of pay more for high end quality coffee. And, there will be a reason to do and to select more, but it's a very complicated issue. And I do not want to make that sound easy, but I love this photograph of these boots and the cherries on the ground. And they're in this wooden box, and that wooden box is a measuring device where you fill it up.
Okay.
And for each box full, you get a little mark and you get a payment for that amount. And each country has its own size, right? Some people measure it by 5-gallon bucket. Some people do it by a latte or other things, but it's a really interesting and very unique way. I'll talk to William about that one. This is a truckload of red ripe cherries going to a centralized milling station in Nicaragua, which that's some impressive red ripe cherry.
And of course, that obviously that was handpicked for that to be that.
Yes, it sure was.
That red.
Yeah, it was. And it took a lot of hands to get that done. And so this is a little thing I was doing just to kind of looking at the development of a coffee cherry from the time that it's too underripe and then overripe. And so the top left-hand corner, you got green, and then you have sort of like a light green, and then we have a red yellow, then we have more of a yellowish red, and then it goes to light red. And the 8 or 9, the darker red, and then the dark purple on the bottom left-hand corner. Now that's a really interesting stage. But then at bottom right-hand corner, it turns brownish black. That's where it kind of comes over. Oh, just kind of overripe, where it kind of peaked and then started to maybe ferment a little bit, with some acetic acid and vinegar and whatnot. But again, I think William Ortiz will be able to go a little bit more into detail on this. But red ripe cherries, measuring them, how do you know when it's done, and what kind of coffee profile or cup or expectation or time or production do you need or want to do? Those are the questions that William, I can't wait to ask, because not all of, like we talked about the other day, the selection of green coffee where we want to have it all at the same screen size, all the particle distribution has to be exactly the same. That philosophy and that concept applies to possibly this. Like all red ripe cherries is great, but at the end of the day, does that actually make the best cup or not? And I will
That may
say that
not
it
make the
probably,
best cup. Yeah.
it could. I don't know. I'm not a coffee. I don't do
Producer.
this for a living,
Yeah.
but William does. So on the left side, once we got the cherries, we have to get the fruit off. And typically, what you see everywhere is these smaller pulpers on family farms or very smaller locations, and it's basically
Okay.
a depulper, typically hooked up to a motor, and that motor, it's just like a lawnmower. Marty, see, this is the thing that I want you to get down there and learn how to calibrate one of these and take it apart, put it back together, and just say like, I got this. I know how to do it now, and now we can improve upon this and just kind of understand this simple basic mechanics that are really cool. And then on the right hand side, once the coffee has kind of shot that stuff off, you can put it in a tank, and it either sits in water or it doesn't, and it does dry or wet sort of fermentation. It's very basic here, and that typically sits overnight, and then the next morning they put a bunch of water on it and wash it off. Like have you ever done like seed saving for tomatoes?
Sure.
You know that sticky stuff on the outside of a tomato seed? You got to get that stuff off with some
Yeah.
newspaper or let it sit for a while. Same thing with coffee seeds. They got the mucilage. You need to clean that stuff off to make it nice and crisp. That's our next slide. But
Okay.
Dietrich, I think I've got a video that I wanted to share with everybody. And I want to just say this is the first time, this is the first video I took in the year 2009 Honduras, the first time I ever saw coffee depulp. So I wanted to share it with everybody so we could all start on the same page. Okay. So everybody, as far as the video goes, Marty and I are about a 5-second delay, so we're not able to actually see what's happening right now. But as I recall, there is a motor. It's being pulled. There's a strap. They kind of get hooked on there, and it's taking the seed. And this is a very poor selection. It was on purpose, and they did say that this was just for a demonstration. So it is no reflection on the quality of like what and how they would honestly be harvesting it. It would all be red ripe cherries, or at least yellow, not that much green. But it basically is like a cheese grater. They get really close together and kind of spits the seed out the front, and then the pulp goes out the back. So what you see there in the video is mostly depulped coffee that still has like a soft, hard shell on the outside of it. A lot of that green really shouldn't be there, but you know what? This is the first time I saw it, so that's what you get to see too for the first time. And so this is a little bit better representation because first off, it happened about 10 years after that, and it's a better video quality. But you'll see that it's a little bit more red ripe cherry there. And I'm just going to look at it here in a minute. Okay, so now you see that the coffee is floating in a washing tank, and not all coffee ends up being of the same quality. Some of it drops to the bottom. The heavier seeds will fall to the bottom, and some of those other seeds will then float to the top. And those seeds that are floating to the top are typically insect damage. They might be overripe. They might have a lot of different issues to them, but they are not the right cherries that you want to keep at the end of the day.
So they're not a dense, solid.
No. They call them segundos or terceros, or like however you want to say it, second or thirds, as far as selection goes, not the highest quality. They kind of separate it off and they don't throw it away. It's a different cup quality. Again, this is a true representation of a very remote farm that harvested all the coffee they could that day. And that's all the floaters that they took off the top. And it's just a little basket with holes at the bottom. And
so there is a market for that. Somebody is buying that coffee.
Yeah, in this case, the folks in Peru said, I think that there's an internal market, and if the internal market doesn't want it, then they'll find a place for it. But it's coffee that it's definitely on the bottom ends. But you know what? If you can sell it, you should sell it.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
if someone wants to drink it, someone will drink it. There's an old saying, all coffee has a home. I don't know if that's true, but it's pretty darn close to being such. So this is a little bit of a step up in operations where you have a little bit more investment in a pulper. This is a different type of pulper system, but in general, goes from the cherry. It removes the pulp, and then then put and placed into these little baths, I guess, or places for the parchment to sit. Now here you don't see a lot of water. That's all sticky stuff that needs to sit there for a while until that well, I'll talk to William about this again on Thursday, but I've heard that when you just put a pole into a bed of parchment, when you pull the pole out and it leaves a hole in the pole in the bed of parchment, it's done, and that's time to add water.
Okay.
Now here's another type of technology. You can measure it with a pH stick. This one says 3.76. It means that the coffee has gotten down to a level of 3.76, or in this case, this bag was a 3.53. This is a pH monitor, but I mean, if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have a $200, I mean, it's like 700, $70, I think, for this thing. Like,
Okay.
that's a lot of money I mean, there's got to be better ways to do this. And that's what I'm going to talk to William about.
Sure. I'd be interested in how acidic they want that to get. And I'm assuming
exactly.
as it ferments, it is becoming more acidic. It's going in that direction. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think that this is about as low as you'd want to go. I mean, then again, William would
That's
probably
fairly
say
acidic. 3.5 is.
yeah, and that might not have been the objective. It's really, there might not even have been an objective on the radar as far as like, oh, I want a 4.5.
Sure.
He just would have said like, it looks done enough for this lot. We're going to take it into the mill and we're going to start drying it. So here is another example of a little bit more of a modern technique. I know this isn't, all these, photos aren't pretty, but coffee processing isn't always pretty. It's a sticky business. And this is a 55-gallon drum, I think. Is it 55 typically? I don't know.
Yeah.
But they fill it up with I think this is pulped coffee for this method, and put the lid on it and have that little air gap to either to cap it off and let air escape, but no air can get in. So at times he also said, well, we fill it up with water too to remove all of the oxygen out of this process, and that is a different way of doing it. So he is experimenting with a lot of different just fun techniques, small batches, just kind of seeing what it does. And I love the cleverness, and I know that William's going to be talking about this a lot on Thursday too. So I want to throw out a word: anaerobic fermentation, or carbonic maceration. Let's have William dive down that rabbit hole. Have you heard of those? Right, you've heard of those terms.
Well,
right?
I have tasted a lot of different coffees that have, I guess, you've got your basic processes, your wash, your natural, and your
pulps
or the honeyed.
Your honeys.
Those are the basic ones, but no, in recent years, I've tasted a lot of coffees that are I wouldn't call them experimental at this point. They're doing in large enough batches and stuff that they're actually producing them, but they are pushing the envelope on those processes and creating flavor profiles that we haven't tasted before.
Oh, there's a great podcast. I forgot what it's called. I'll have to mention it next on Thursday, but there is a woman who is doing an amazing podcast that a friend of mine in Honduras told me to check out. And it was about different types of yeast, bacterias, and all these different types of research that they're doing. And I will get back to you on that note, but it's a great podcast. Check it out. Again, we had a 5-minute prep for this conversation today, but let me just tell you that this is after it's been pretty much sorted out and soaked, and the stickiness is no longer there. It's ready to be dried, and they need to there's a lot of different ways to dry. Now traditionally, this is it. You got a black tart, you lay it out in the sun, and you take a rake over it and you let it dry, and it takes maybe a day or two depending on how much sun, or maybe 3 or 4, maybe like 7 days. Boy, how long was that? Probably 7 days. I don't know. Boy, I should have prepped myself on this one. I know it wasn't a day. It takes longer than a day.
Yeah, I
But
know
right,
I've seen
yeah.
pictures and of them raking, maybe even putting little piles in rows. You know how often they would stir that?
Yeah, this is yeah, he well, you know, that depends on what their objective is and you know what
Sure.
kind of background they might have as a coffee farmer or it's just a side thing or you
I
know the
guess
way
it
like
also
but
would
this was
determine on the condition, the environmental condition. If it's really, really
100%.
dry out, well,
Yep.
you know,
Absolutely. And actually, you know, this gentleman, he did it about 2, I think, to 3 times a day, one in the morning, one in the
okay.
afternoon, and one at night. And then he'd wrap it all up and then put it inside so it would not get stolen. And it would, and so here you see that there's a screen on the left and then a pile on the right. The screen on the left is coffee that has not yet been shaken. So the coffee that's going to remain on the top of that screen is going to be a secondary quality grade and the stuff that follows through is the premium quality grade. So that is a simple technology that they have used to kind of help. But William will talk more about this on Thursday and go more into details like why and how this came about. This again here is another on the ground on black tarps, but a massive field
That's
of
big.
coffee. Yeah, this one is side of the road in Nicaragua. Just I was like, hey, that's a bag of coffee out there. Actually, probably couple hundred of them. So that's a massive production of just coffee being raked on the side of the road in Nicaragua. And talk about processing techniques and different types of things. This could all be the exact same coffee off the exact same plant, but it's done 5 different ways. Your natural processed coffees are the ones on the right that look like raisins that have been cherries just dried. There's no pulping. Pick it and then just let it dry, and they turn it quite a bit so it doesn't mold. And then the bottom center, you have like what they would call, or what people mentioned would call like black honey, right? Have you ever had black honey? They just, they have black honey, they have yellow honey, they have red honey, they have white honey. It's basically a different amount of pulp or mucilage, which is removed, you know, prior to it being put on the beds to dry. So
Okay.
The amount of mucilage on each one. So black honey has quite a bit. It's like super sticky. And then the different colors have traditionally different grades. So like yellow honey, red honey, red honey's a little bit more, and black honey's like full.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that those different processes infuse or affect what that bean tastes like by virtue of marrying the flavors, not only from the bean, but from the material that's left on it to dry on the bean, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know,
That's
here's
for doing that.
Yeah, here's a raised bed. I took a photo from the top and I was like, oh, that's cool. You've got the natural on the top, you've got the honey on the bottom. So I just kind of put up a natural process. You know, things about the benefits are it uses very little minimal water usage. Now, this process was became famous, I think, basically from Ethiopian Harar back in eastern Ethiopia, where there is a lack of water.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So there's not a large availability of water. So what are you going to do? Adapt to your environment. Don't use a lot of water. You dry your coffee on raised beds, and you don't pulp it because you don't have any water to pulp it with. You get intensified fruit flavors because, like you said, absolutely soaks it right into the seed. But there's a high risk of spoilage if you don't turn it enough. So it's a relatively dangerous approach if the technique isn't there. And again, William, I'd love to talk to him on Thursday to go a little bit more into depth about how do you avoid that high risk of spoilage concept, and what are the simple technologies that have been put into place to avoid that, to not make it sound so dangerous. Just find the information and put it to use. And then we have the honey process at the bottom.
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and quickly get through this. And I think I got a question coming, but so for honey process, the history behind this is kind of fun. Went to Costa Rica, talked to someone named Grace, and she was gracious enough to tell me a little of the history about how honey process started in Costa Rica. Apparently, as the legend goes, there was a farm that was processing coffee, washed coffee, using lots of water. And there was like an earthquake or hurricane, the power went out. I don't know what, something happened. They lost power. All the water pumps stopped and they couldn't continue washing their coffee in the traditional manner. So they had to come up with something else to do. So they said, well, let's just pulp it without water, put it out on the beds and see, if we can save this crop. we can see if we can save this. And they saved it. They cupped it, and they're like, it's a little bit fruity, and then it became to be sort of like an interesting market for it. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, Marty, or anybody else out there. Let me know what the true story is. If that's a true story, I feel that's pretty cool. So that's what I know about that. Also, minimal water usage. Again, couldn't get any water to it. There's more gentle, subtle fruit flavors because it's not so much surrounded by that fruit. And then we have the slighter risk of spoilage, but you still have a challenge there. And again, I believe that William from Caravela on Thursday will definitely go into that aspect of what are the technologies in place to avoid that. So we have a question.
I first got into coffee. About the only naturals you could get, I believe, were Ethiopian and maybe some Yemen, because they were driving that and had been doing that for many years, mostly because of the water deal there. But in recent years, you start seeing some of these other origins that are experimenting and coming up with some products like Costa Rican, which I'm a Costa Rican coffee fan, and it wasn't but just very few years ago that I had a natural Ethiopian or a natural Costa Rican.
And it's getting so good. I mean, people are.
Experience.
Yeah, there is so much experience and so much progress in this area. Back, a long time ago, in Brazil, they did, they still do natural processed coffees, but traditionally, it's not been looked at as being a sought after coffee. It's kind of the cheapest coffee and the easiest thing to do, and probably the lowest grade, and it still is today in a lot of areas around the world that are, it's pretty nasty coffee, but it can also be the best coffee I've ever had. And it has been, honestly. Hey, Dietrich, did you have a question from above?
Yeah, not necessarily a question, but it's something to just remind everyone who's watching. We're about a little over halfway through the show. We had some more people join in towards the end of it. But if you are joining in today, we were initially going to have William. Was it Ortiz? You said?
Yes.
William Ortiz on from Caravela. He unfortunately was unable to make it due to some travel issues with Wi-Fi, but he will be back on Thursday. So we wanted to do this a little preliminary show that kind of went through the background of like the seed to cup kind of concept. And John knows a lot about this as well, so he's a great person. If you do have any initial questions, you can ask John, or you can also come up with some unique questions for William on Thursday as well. So that'll be the same time that we normally host on Tuesday on Thursday. But I'll let John and Marty wrap up.
Yeah, thanks. Dietrich, thanks a lot for saying that. And again, subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified on Thursday to join us, like right on time. We'll be like, go live. And you can always skip this episode if you have already heard all of this, the processing stuff, and just get ready for William, because he'll take it to the next coffee tech geek level for us.
And another thing too is don't forget to definitely like the video if you guys are enjoying the stream, because it does help us out quite a bit. If you do like the video, it allows the video to be noticed by other people who may not have seen the show yet. So if you can like the video, that is super helpful, especially if you're watching it after the show as well.
All right, well, let's jump into parchment. I love it. Have you ever jumped into like a container of parchment? I have not, but I kind of want to. It's sort of like I don't know. Now I kind of think it'd be kind of fun to do. Anyway, kind of like wasteful thing to do and kind of embarrassing. So let's not do that. This is a moisture reader that has built into it a parchment coffee calibration. So you can put a little bit of parchment on the top. You can turn it down, push a button. It'll tell you exactly what the percentage of moisture is. That is one tool. But again, William, I think we'll go more into detail as far as like, what's the use of this? And not every farmer out there that's producing coffee is going to even have the privilege or the finances to buy something like this. So how do they get that done, and how do they do it so well without this kind of technology? Dietrich, another question.
Yeah, we've got a question from you guys with your names, Christopher Andrew Openhuis.
Openhuis.
Openhuis. There we go. Okay,
hey,
I got it right.
What's
Christopher is asking you, John, have you heard of the hydro honey process, and if you have, any comments on it?
Well, I have heard of the hydro honey process coffee, and I'm not quite sure what country it's from, but I know that there's some coffee coming out of Kansas City, either green or roasted or both, that is playing around with that. Marty, what do you know about the hydro?
I don't know, Jack.
Is it Brazil though? I don't know.
But I
Yeah.
think it is, I think it is Brazil. And I think Christopher is probably going to owe me a bag of that. Just saying. 'Cause
Okay, I'm
think-
gonna throw out a wild guess. How about that? You want to just wild guess it? I can do it. You want to wild guess this one? I think it's a honey process. They do it. They dry it.
Okay.
Honey process is dried, and then I don't know. They soak it again in water, and then they dry it out and they pulp it. I don't know.
Well-
There's a step in there. Christopher, I should have just called him. He should have just been on the show.
Sorry.
We'll just get him on here sometime.
Christopher, go ahead and type on in and give us the answer, and we'll read it out here.
Yeah, Christopher, if
yeah.
you leave it in the comments too, we'll be able to see it
Yep.
in the post show as well. So
absolutely.
definitely leave that in there. You got
Well, this
some
is supposed to
info
be
on it. or ask William about it as well.
Absolutely. Well, this is supposed to be a half hour, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got well over that plus 10 more minutes. So I've got to get to this. This is another instrument that you use, indoor humidity. This is in a greenhouse where coffee is stored. I guess you call it I don't know, solar house or something like that. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Pretty
But
warm there.
it is. It's 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 41% moisture at that level. But there was 4 different places in this greenhouse, and they all had different indoor humidity levels. And it was really interesting. Like, it depends on where you place this, what kind of treatment and process and
Interesting.
yeah. So I think William again will answer those questions. How is this determined? Why does that matter? After it is dried, it goes to often a place. It's a little bit more industrial that either does it, this hand sorting, or you have these types of gravity density sorting tables. Again, we're going to have probably a whole episode, I hope, one day, just on how one of these things work. But at the very high level here, very basic, coffee comes, down these chutes in the back and comes across these tables. And these tables are like air hockey. Play air hockey and shooting air up from underneath. It's exactly the
love
same thing
that
that's happened here, with a little bit of vibration, and they're also a little bit tilted. So you have all of this forced like air popping up. So the stuff that's lighter is going to kind of edge
Sure.
its way to one side or the other. And those 3 little sticks at the end there, and those 3 little buckets give it 3 different quality levels of density. And that is an initial type of sorting. After that, it typically could go onto a belt, and you would have people picking the coffee. This again here, each one of those bags is filled with parchment, and they could weigh about 100 pounds of parchment, I believe.
And John, when you say parchment, that's not just the parchment that surrounds the bean. That's the parchment encased over a coffee bean. So that's a coffee bean that hasn't been deparched. I don't know if that's a word or not.
Yeah, it has not been dry milled yet. It has not.
Yeah.
It has not been. The parchment has not yet been removed, and I don't know. Unfortunately, I might have missed that slide to pop in there. So after that parchment has been removed, people, green coffee. I think I might have a slide coming up here of some green coffee. I hope. Actually, I don't think I
Okay.
do. But anyway, that green coffee goes into a little sample roaster, at the dry mill or wherever the coffee is dried, and you take the huller off, take the huller, hulls the parchment off, turns into the seed, and then you roast it for about typically about 7 to 8, 9 minutes. Really light roast sample, maybe 6 minutes, depends on who's doing it and what elevation you are, how much
Okay.
gas and whatever you got. You roast it, and in these cases, in this scenario, they're roasting it and they're cupping it and they're scoring it and they're paying the farmer the same day. So it's not like in our world like Q grading, where you roast it one day, let it sit for 24 hours, and then cup the coffee and then do the score. This is an immediate turnaround, because farmers are waiting in their pickup trucks to get a check, and they want to make sure that not only do they get quality incentivization and also the proper amount of coffee, but they're kind of like, there's my coffee, I don't want to pay me. So they have to do it. And there's cupping it, staffs that are working at export stations like this are extremely highly trained. It's kind of a next level that it kind of boggles my mind how little I've experienced after seeing 1 or 2 of these cuppers work for a week. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, well, they are dialed in and they know exactly what's going on. I would talk to this one lady or a couple ladies, and they would know exactly, what's going on with this coffee. That farmer needs to do X, Y, Z, and this is this, that, and the other. Again, William on Thursday, I would love to talk to him more about the skill sets that we hold here, and the skill sets that are at Origin, and how much we may not know yet. So
Sure.
it's really cool. But being a Q grader, though, Marty, really sets you up to be able to have a dialogue that is recognizable and calibrated. I don't care where you are in the world and how much coffee you've cupped. You've got you took the initiative and you took the training to at least be able to be familiar with what's going on here. So there's some green coffee in the bags from, I don't know, it's probably Cafe Imports. That's the green coffee in those plastic bags. So, and then you have the roasted coffee with sample sets on the side, where this is a cupping that I do. And this coffee has been sent to the United States to importers. The importers, get all these samples, and then they select the samples that they would like to sell to their roasting partners, wherever they're located in the world, Kansas City or Lincoln here.
Sure.
They buy the green coffee, and they sell it to the roasters. The roasters, have someone there like myself that would, take a sample, roast it, and I'd wait 24 hours because I have 24 hours, and then brew a couple cups of coffee and decide whether or not it fits my program, my price, and my objective, my budget, and all that stuff, and I buy it. So, like Anthem in Kansas City, I'd maybe call them up, or maybe Cafe Imports or Royal or whoever else. I can throw out 20 names, but say, hey, I'd like to buy some of that coffee. So they put it on a pallet and they ship it to me, and that's it. And now we're ready for William Ortiz.
That was a nice teaser, nice setup for that.
And I apologize to everybody. Again, it was just last minute. William was WhatsApp. We were on WhatsApp. He's like, hey, I got stuck in El Salvador. I didn't catch the flight to Guatemala City. So unfortunately, the hotel that I'm at now just doesn't have that Wi-Fi. And it's like, hey, that's a part of this whole thing. That's how it works. You just got to go with the flow, and it's a live stream. And I hope that today we at least had set the stage for, getting some of the basics and the questions out of the way. So maybe on Thursday, if you do have questions and you watch this episode from now until Thursday, come back with us with questions. Come with questions for William also, because I have my 3 questions: is how do you reduce waste and spoilage in these types of processes? And what kind of other technologies that are simple have you seen that have been applied and improved in the last, decade or more? Because I don't know, Marty, if I don't know, in my world, when I hear Caravela coffee, I think, exactly this: global quality. I mean, they are top notch. They take it serious, and they have some really great coffee. So I would like to find out what their secret is.
Sure. And I would like to know also how much in the processing, I know there's technology that can be quantified, but to your story that you've mentioned a few times about the farmer picking up the cherry and biting into it and determining whether it was ready for the next part of the process or not, based on what that felt like or tasted like. I don't know what. That to me takes it to kind of an artist level. And so it would be interesting to hear from someone that's right in the middle of that, like he is.
Yeah, I mean, the questions for me are like, if you go into a farm, you see coffee on, like on a black tarp, and like, why isn't it not on a raised bed? And, why am I saying that it should be on a raised bed? What do I know? I'm just like, a guy from Lincoln, Nebraska, going to a farm, read a book about some raised beds and said, well, that's how that should be done. So it's a really interesting conversation to have, to be like, just as a green coffee buyer and one who goes, and looks at these types of operations, it's a very good approach to remain humble, to ask questions, and to never make an assumption about anything, because I guarantee you probably don't know what's going on. And just listen and learn and enjoy and soak it all in, because it is an amazing experience. But be humble. And we got another question. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm excited to talk to William as well. And I personally I find it interesting seeing just the fact that, like, why aren't So like what the decision process is behind like choosing the route on which you're going to process your coffee, and you're going to like when you're picking it and what you're growing specifically, just to the process behind that I find is very interesting. Because what I've noticed as well in having a background in coffee and then a little bit of knowledge in wine as well is there is a lot of similarities between the two industries in many ways, and especially when it comes to the processing of a fruit like the coffee berry or like a grape or something. Christopher also popped in to just follow up in terms of that hydro honey process.
Oh, thank you.
Christopher says that it's dried in the fruit, rehydrated in washing tanks. You'll remove the skin and dry in parchment like a honey before being milled. So
okay, there you go.
Hey, John, and this is going to sound like, oh yeah, right. I had heard that, and one of the farmers that was speaking on that said that they started rehydrating that to make it easier to get that dried pulp and skin off, because it gets hard.
I see. Okay.
They were rehydrating it really for the ease of the next step of removing all that. But it aids in flavor profiles too.
And you're right. I also think I might have heard about it too, but it just I was still stuck on carbonic maceration and anaerobic fermentation, and I'm still trying to figure out honey. So I'm like, all right, well, this is all great though. I love the exploration. And again, I'd like to, can't wait to see what William says on Thursday about, hey, what's going on now, and how are things looking at the market, and is have we gone too far? What about the good old washed coffees?
Sure.
Maybe it's not good old washed. Maybe about the good old naturals. Maybe we just we are where we are, and I would like to see at the end of the day, I think we're still looking to see more of that value end up in the pocket of those who are caring for these lands and for producing this coffee. And I got to tell you, that's not happening drastically, and I don't think it's happening anywhere near as much as it should. But there are some really cool things happening. There's small micro farmers, producers, and communities. Like Santa Elena, in Honduras with Myra
Sure.
Powell at Royal Coffee, they're legit. It's integrity. It's exactly the way that I wish that everybody would do coffee. So I got to stop. I'm getting all passionate about this. I'm like, oh my god,
Well,
the world's gonna end, but we're gonna be okay, guys. It's gonna be all right.
well,
All right.
a quick thank you to Christopher for reaching out and sharing his knowledge. He is absolutely always good for tidbit of information that is rock solid. So thank you, Christopher, for sharing your time with us and your knowledge with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Hey, so on Thursday at 7:00 p.m. Central Time, we're gonna do this show, Coffee Tech Talk with John and Marty, on Thursday edition, because we can't just get enough of it. Episode number 22. William Ortiz, Global Coffee Quality Manager, Global Quality Manager. Let me say that correctly. Caravela Coffee, currently in El Salvador, maybe in Guatemala. Don't know where he's going to be after that, but I can't wait to see him. And again, my name is John Ferguson with Coffee Tech Talk, and I think that's Marty.
Marty Rowe. I'm also with Coffee Tech Talk.
There you go.
Here's my little one-liner is, okay, you cancel a convention, a show, you won't let us go, we will bring it to you. So,
Exactly.
that's what we're doing, and it's been a ton of fun, and to be able to this is like sitting in some of the classes and stuff when we bring these awesome guests on. But I'm with Workbench Coffee Labs. We also run a service company, but we are launching this year. Just got some more curriculum this week from the SCA that was authorized for technical training. So learn how to repair coffee equipment. That's what we do.
And hey, a part of this new revamp of the new colors for 2021, we have a little, little slide at the end of the show, you're going to see that kind of thanks everybody who's participated in some shape or form financially. Like, again, I got to mention, oh my gosh, I almost forgot to mention, Marcus Bonney has donated $500 to GoFundMe. And we've also taken care of that aspect from Coffee Tech Talk, and also Barista Magazine is going to be throwing in $500 to total $1,500 to GoFundMe. And great organization. Check out all the great stuff that they do in a past episode. And thank you very much, everybody, for kind of supporting that. Our goal was to get more subscribers. It was just kind of a nice, fun thing. I had no idea that was completely a crazy idea. Like, oh, it's just 1,500 YouTube subscribers. Again, one at a time, one day at a time, one lovely viewer at a time. If you like this show, please subscribe and join us on Thursday. Have a great night, and thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.